Ever wondered who the Vikings really were? Were they just brutal raiders in horned helmets? Well, throw that image away, because the real story is so much more fascinating. Let's travel back in time to 8th century Scandinavia. Picture a rugged land of fjords and forests, where life was tough. The people here, the Norsemen, were farmers, fishers, and exceptional craftsmen. Their greatest achievement? The longship. This vessel wasn't just a boat, it was a technological marvel. Sleek, fast, and able to navigate both the open ocean and shallow rivers, it was the key that would unlock the world for them. And unlock it they did. In the year 793, a fleet of these longships appeared off the coast of northeastern England, at a small, holy island called Lindisfarne. The unsuspecting monks there witnessed the dawn of a new era. The raid on Lindisfarne's monastery was swift, brutal, and shocking. It sent a wave of terror across Europe and marked the dramatic beginning of what we now call the Viking Age. But this was more than just a hit and run. It was a declaration. The Norsemen had arrived, and the world would never be the same. What drove them from their homes? Was it overpopulation, a quest for wealth, or just the spirit of adventure? Historians believe it was a mix of all three. Back in Scandinavia, good farmland was scarce, and local chieftains were constantly battling for power. For an ambitious young warrior, sailing abroad offered a direct path to riches, glory, and land of their own. The success of early raids created a feedback loop. Stories of treasure and easy targets spread like wildfire, inspiring more and more men to take to the seas. The Viking Age had begun, not just as an act of aggression, but as a bold solution to the problems they faced at home. From that first raid, the Viking expansion exploded across the map. Their longships became a terrifyingly common sight from the coasts of Britain to the rivers of Russia. In England, what started as raids evolved into full-scale invasion and settlement. Great armies of Vikings landed, carving out a huge territory known as the Danelaw, where Norse law and customs held sway. This wasn't just a temporary camp. They put down roots, establishing towns and farms, forever changing the cultural and genetic landscape of England. But they didn't stop there. Across the Channel, a Viking leader named Rollo struck a deal with the French king. In exchange for his loyalty and protection against other raiders, he was granted a vast territory that would come to be known as Normandy, the land of the Northmen. His descendants, the Normans, would go on to become one of the most powerful forces in medieval Europe, eventually conquering England itself in 1066. Think about that. The Viking legacy was so profound, it came back to conquer one of its first targets. Meanwhile, other Vikings sailed south. They braved the stormy Bay of Biscay, raiding the coasts of Spain and Portugal, even clashing with the Moors. They sailed into the Mediterranean, reaching the shores of Italy and the Byzantine Empire. In the east, Swedish Vikings, known as the Rus, traveled down the great rivers of modern-day Russia and Ukraine. They weren't just raiding, they were trading. Furs, honey, and slaves for silver, silks, and spices. They established trade routes that connected Scandinavia to Constantinople and even Baghdad, founding cities like Kiev and becoming the ruling class of a new people. The Vikings weren't just destroyers. They were founders of nations and pioneers of global trade. But perhaps their most legendary journeys were to the west, into the vast, unknown Atlantic. Led by intrepid explorers, they used the sun, stars, and the flight of seabirds to navigate. First, they discovered Iceland, a volcanic island of fire and ice, and established a thriving, independent commonwealth there. From Iceland, an outlaw named Eric the Red, exiled for manslaughter, pushed even further west. He landed on a massive island, which he cleverly named Greenland to attract settlers. And it worked. A Norse colony survived there for nearly 500 years, farming and hunting in a harsh, unforgiving climate. The story doesn't even end there. Eric the Red's own son, Leif Erikson, heard tales of land even further west. Around the year 1000, driven by that same Norse spirit of adventure, he set sail from Greenland. He and his crew landed on the shores of what is now Newfoundland, Canada. They called this new land Vinland, the land of wine, because of the wild grapes they found. They had reached North America almost 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Archaeological evidence at Lance Auxiliary Meadows confirms their settlement, the remains of Norse longhouses, a forge, and artifacts. While their settlement in Vinland didn't last, it stands as the ultimate testament to their incredible skill as navigators and their boundless courage to sail into the unknown. So, what was life actually like in a Viking society? It was organized around a strong social hierarchy. At the top were the jarls, or chieftains, who were wealthy landowners and military leaders. Below them were the carls, the free men. This was the largest group, made up of farmers, merchants, sailors, and craftsmen. They owned land, could vote in local assemblies called things, and formed the backbone of Viking armies. At the bottom were the thralls, or slaves. These were often people captured in raids or those who fell into debt. Viking women, contrary to some popular beliefs, had a surprising degree of freedom and authority compared to their counterparts in other parts of Europe. While men were away raiding or trading, women ran the farms and households. They could own property, inherit land, and even divorce their husbands. A powerful woman was the keeper of the keys to the longhouse, a symbol of her control over the family's wealth and provisions. Norse mythology is filled with powerful female figures, like Freya, a goddess of love, war, and magic, reflecting the respected role of women in their society. And what about their beliefs? Norse mythology is a rich tapestry of gods, giants, and epic tales. You've probably heard of Odin, the All-Father, who sacrificed an eye for wisdom, Thor, the mighty god of thunder with his hammer Mjolnir, and Loki, the cunning trickster god. For the Vikings, these weren't just stories. They were a way of understanding the world, the changing seasons, the unpredictability of fate, and the importance of honor and courage. They believed that warriors who died bravely in battle would be carried by Valkyries to Valhalla, Odin's great hall, to feast and fight until the final battle of Ragnarok. This belief system fueled their fearless approach to life and death. After nearly 3 centuries of dominance, the Viking Age began to wane. So what happened? There wasn't one single event, but a combination of powerful changes. One of the biggest was the rise of Christianity. As Vikings settled in places like England and France, they gradually converted to the new faith. Christian missionaries also traveled to Scandinavia, slowly winning over kings and chieftains. Christianity brought with it a different worldview, one that didn't glorify raiding. It also brought a new political structure, with powerful kings and a centralized church, which challenged the old, decentralized power of local jarls. The world around them was also changing. The kingdoms they once raided had become stronger and better organized. They built fortifications, raised professional armies, and learned how to fight back effectively. The element of surprise, the Vikings' greatest weapon, was gone. The era of easy plunder was over. Internally, Scandinavia itself was transforming. The separate chiefdoms were consolidating into the unified kingdoms of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, with powerful monarchs who preferred stable, taxable trade over chaotic raiding expeditions. The Viking way of life was simply becoming obsolete. The symbolic end of the Viking Age is often dated to one specific year, 1066. It was a year of epic conflict centered on the English throne. The Norwegian king, Harald Hardrada, a man often called the last great Viking, launched a massive invasion of England to claim the crown. He was met at the Battle of Stamford Bridge by the English army under King Harold Godwinson. The battle was incredibly fierce, but in the end, the English were victorious, and Harald Hardrada was killed. This defeat marked the end of major Scandinavian invasions of England. But here's the twist. Just a few weeks later, the exhausted English army had to march south to face another invader, William, Duke of Normandy. And who was William? A direct descendant of the Viking chieftain Rollo. At the Battle of Hastings, William the Conqueror defeated and killed Harold Godwinson, claiming the English throne. So, in a way, the Vikings did conquer England in 1066 after all, just not the ones anyone expected. This event perfectly illustrates the end of the Viking Age. The Norsemen were no longer outsiders raiding Europe. They had become an integral part of it, shaping its kingdoms, its culture, and its destiny. From raiders to rulers, explorers to kings, the journey of the Vikings is one of the most incredible stories in human history. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the Viking Age. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more amazing stories from history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what historical topic you'd like to see next. Until then, stay curious.